It is time indeed for the newsroom. My guests are all set in studio to get to discussing some of those big stories we've been covering for you. How is it we've told those stories well, not well? Have we missed something? Content created, context rather, perspective, going deeper, telling the full story, the full picture being painted. Has that happened is what we want to talk about this morning. And introducing my guests now, Patrick Gadara, who's a communications consultant, my extreme left. In the middle, Gunjuri Wambogo, who's a political commentator and a features editor here at The Standard on Sunday, Clay Muganda as well. Good to see you all. And we will be joined by Dennis Itumbi from the State House shortly.
Which State House? Mombasa, Nairobi?
The one in Nairobi. So let's get to it. He's part of the digital team, I think the head of the digital team. We will get that right shortly. But let's begin with the returnees, as they've been called by most of the media, but the Kenyans who've come back from Liberia last evening around 11 p.m. And Catherine Omonthos reported for us that about 9 of them returned, 12 were expected. I saw a tweet from you last evening bashing the media for not questioning the fare or the amount of money that was used to get these Kenyans back home. So to use 3 times the amount of money that perhaps would go for one ticket to bring Kenyans home who have been there and have wanted to come back for a very long period of time, you think that's wrong?
I think the whole story has a very, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth, if you ask me. I mean, the fact that they stayed there, number one, for so long, that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which was initially meant to buy these tickets, said initially that they had already bought them, that they were waiting for clearance from the Ministry of Health. And that apparently didn't happen. Or the Ministry of Health came out saying that they didn't need any clearance to get them on the plane. And then it turns out that they actually hadn't bought the tickets. It's the Red Cross that was buying the tickets, and it was going to be refunded. And then a news report comes out saying that the government is saying it's going to spend 5 million shillings to bring back 12 people. So I called up SNS Brussels. How much is a flight down to Nairobi? It's from Monrovia. It's $1,740. You work that out, it comes about 1.8 million for 12 people. Where is the other 3 million going? And that was my beef. It seems that everybody's taking the figures being given by government for granted. They should really be put to task to explain, where is this money going? We were told yesterday that actually if these guys turned out negative, they wouldn't be even be quarantined any longer. They'd be allowed to self-quarantine at home. So again, with the 3 million being spent, and even if they quarantined all 12 people at Kenya at JKIA, that 3M would be the equivalent of paying about 12,000 per person per day, which is a hotel room.
All right. Let's hear from Gunjuri your thoughts.
For how long?
For 21 days.
Okay.
Gunjuri.
Okay, I hear where Gadara is coming from in terms of unanswered questions, but I guess also my problem with his argument would be that who's asking these questions? Who's supposed to be asking these questions? Why do we assume that it's only the media that can ask these questions? Any citizen can actually ask these questions. You can challenge government. You can ask them, look, we hear you guys have spent 5 million shillings. I've done my maths. It appears you have somebody is going to steal our 3 million shillings. We'd like to know where that 3 million shillings is going. I think it's a bit too much to expect that the media, which is in the business of selling news, is also going to go and do accountability for us. I don't think they're going to go and start asking all the questions we want asked. Why not?
But why not?
You see, this is. I keep saying this. We forget media is business.
So whose interests then are we representing in this business?
But you see, it's not even about. That's why we keep getting lost. Media interest is a second tier deliverable of media. The first thing that media does is make money. So until we are clear in our heads that a question about where the 3 million shillings is going to be of interest to who? Do they buy newspapers? Do they watch TV? If they don't, why am I asking it? Now, somebody like Gadara or any other concerned citizen might actually want to know the details of
Are
that
you
issue.
suggesting that Kenyans don't care that 3 million of their shillings might be stolen?
If
of
they
course they
did,
do.
if they did, we'd have a few more people actually asking the questions you're asking.
He has started. For me, I would look at it a bit differently. Okay, fine. You said that the media, their first objective is to make money. Actually, their first objective is to generate content because that's what they sell. Without that, you won't make the money. First of all, you must.
It's
have
where
the
you
content.
start.
Yeah.
It's where you start that conversation. Do
then
you start by looking for the money so you generate the content, or do you start by generating content?
What is the
and
most
selling it?
important thing in their minds? Are they
Yes,
more
what
like
is your bottom line?
content? They're
First-
more
you thinking
money.
What are you
Why are
going
you
to
thinking
sell?
money?
What are you going to sell? What
No,
are you
Yeah,
going
that
to
is
sell?
as a
about-
result
I'm
of
sorry.
money being the objective.
Yeah.
So now you know, okay, I want money. So what do I need to do then?
I need to
create
get good
I
content.
have to
Yeah.
get good content.
So you start with
yeah.
the money,
So money
then you
is
deal with
Fine.
the content.
Fine, your name betrays you.
Enterprise. It's
Anyway,
enterprise. That one I can
anyway,
explain
the
to you
thing
very
is,
easily.
What
Yes.
Gadara is talking about, or what you're talking about, is I mean, anybody can ask these questions, but the underlying fact here is this: there's a problem we have here, and nobody tends to talk about it. I think the other day I had people talk about it. There is this Access to Information Act.
Yes.
This thing, until we will get it passed, then we are going to have all these problems. Like, okay, fine, somebody will tell us 1.8 million. Right now, even if we decide, okay, fine, we want to ask how much money was spent on all these people, to ferry these guys back home. You see, which department are we going to go to? If we are denied this information, what is the recourse? What can we do? But whenever that bill will be passed, then at least we will have a starting point. And if you deny me that information, because when that bill is passed, anybody, any private citizen, it's not just the media actually who can go and ask for that information. Right now, we can go to the Ministry of Information, you can go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
So you want all Kenyans to line up and go to this ministry?
No, I'm
Isn't
saying
it the
like all
media's
these,
role to
I'm
come out
saying all
and
these
give
things,
this
all these things.
information?
But you see, right now we can go to all these people. We can get wrong information, or they can actually refuse to give us the information.
And there's nothing
but
we can do
there's
about it.
nothing
Yeah,
we
but
can do
Clay,
about it.
the problem is the question is not being asked in the first place. And I fundamentally
No, I think
disagree
the
with
question
what
is not,
Mojiri
it's not about,
suggesting
it's not
here.
about, you don't have to ask, not every question must end with a question mark. Just the fact that, just the fact that it was raised, the point was raised about how much it is going to cost. There was actually a question being raised that it is going to cost 5 million shillings. I read that story because it's going to, right now what is happening is that most airlines have cancelled their flights from Liberia. So most of the airlines are actually charging a premium.
Actually,
You see.
now, Clay, this is where again I say we get mixed up and you obfuscate the issue. I called SNS Brussels, who are flying from Monrovia. In fact, they're the same flight. The same airline that the government is paying this cost on. And they said the cost of getting somebody, of a ticket from Monrovia to Nairobi is $1,640. In fact, it is cheaper to come out of Monrovia to fly in. You know, that is a cost. That's what the government will pay. Why are they saying 5 million?
I think
So
I don't want to think for the government. I don't want to think for the government, and I don't want. I don't want to think.
There are two things. That's the first. My first big problem is that question wasn't asked. Whoever wrote that story didn't bother to pick up and ask. You know, he just took the figure he was given and ran with it. My second bit is what Mojiri is suggesting here as a role of the press. We've been out from the 90s fighting for the press to have freedom to speak, to publish. You know, this is a public sphere that we have created at great cost to ourselves. And there's a reason why we do that. It's not so that they can...
so you maintain the question should be asked. It's up to them.
Yeah, they need to pursue the public interest. It is intrinsic, you know, in the contract they have with the population.
The social
That's why
Mojiri,
they're called,
before we move away
that's why
from
they
this,
are the fourth estate. That's why you consider them that.
In terms of the coverage of this story from the very beginning, looking at what's happening elsewhere and what's happening here at home, have we drawn those contrasts? Have we compared? Nigeria was declared Ebola-free by WHO, still ravaging parts of West Africa. US coming up with their own strategies and ways to counter this. Kenya, we keep getting reassurances on the media reports. Yes, we are. You know, it's good. It's all good. Are you? I think satisfied with the coverage so far?
My personal opinion, first and foremost, I think we are scared.
Shouldn't we be?
to ask those questions.
Oh, okay.
We don't want to hear. We don't want to pursue. This is what I think. Kenyans are seated here and they're praying completely that we will continue being Ebola free. And they don't want to ask, you know, the way you're feeling you have a headache and you don't want to go to the doctor lest he tells you that it's more than a headache. I think that's where we are going through as a country. And I think this is a system problem. We are scared of bad news. So we would rather not ask the way we've covered this story, we've been covering on the drama around the stories rather than actually find periphery. We're not trying to get into the question. I mean, we've had people moving in and out of Ebola prone areas, and we keep insisting we are Ebola free. I mean, it's not happening. Nobody has gone to find out how exactly is it that we are Ebola free. What is it that we are doing that other countries where it is actually going across borders or going through the flights are not doing? Nobody's asking those questions, lest we find out that we might not be as safe as we assume we are. That is my opinion of how the media has been covering this particular story.
You think they're burying their heads in the sand?
Not burying their heads in the sand. We are just scared.
I find it odd. I find it odd that Ngunjiri would say that we are scared of reporting bad news, and I mean, apparently, from the little interaction that we have on the in the virtual world, is that you're the same people who complain when we report the bad news. You see, when we report this bad news.
So we're not reporting because we are trying to be nice to Kenyans.
I don't even think we are trying to be nice to Kenyans.
What is happening is this. I don't want to put a blanket condemnation on the media here. But the thing is, I know there's been very little information, but this one is also because of lack of specialists in the media.
Yes.
Having said that, I have to admit that right now, out of all these media houses, and from what I know, Standard Group tends to have a science writer, actually somebody who studies, apart from journalism, studies public health too. And Joy Wanja has done a wonderful job in covering Ebola-related stories. We have covered Ebola-related stories. The other week, it was a lead story. It was a lead story in Saturday. The previous, I think 2 weeks before that, she did a story for my magazine, which actually we carried in the main book. We were the first people to carry pictures of the so-called Ebola isolation unit at KNH. You see, nobody had ever carried that. You see, so she's done quite a good job for that much. And I think what is happening is that the government also needs to do more, because I remember it was on this set that we actually talked about that there needs to be public announcement.
Awareness. And do you remember after that it started happening?
That's when it all started.
Yeah.
But even now, I still feel that the government, yes, the media can do its bit, but the government has all the power, you know.
But what about the county governments where this health has now been devolved to? We are not one is focusing on the county governments.
I'm seeing advertisements in English and Swahili. I would have expected the government to have actually flooded this country with public information, public service announcement in almost all languages.
Gadara, why are we not seeing the spotlight as well on the county governments? Because health is there.
The county.
Yeah, it's an accounting
yes,
function
it should have been devolved. And again, here is my usual refrain. I think the questions essentially aren't being asked about what our preparedness is. There is a plan, there's a contingency plan that our government has talked about. Who has seen it? Who has interrogated it? You know, what does it actually say? You know, and this is my problem, is if we don't go out and seek this, and this is the thing I really love if our media are to take on board, is to actually not wait to be fed this information. You know, it's not in government's interest to tell you what it's doing wrong. It will never do that. You know, you've got to go out, seek it. You've got to go out and chase it. You know, and I find that in the case of the Ebola whole story, I mean, there has been some reporting. I mean, let's not say it's not a zero-sum thing here. There has been some reporting, some pretty good reporting. You know, as you mentioned.
Scale of 1 to 10,
but still not enough. I mean, I look at the report that the Ministry of Health itself put out on the state of our public health system, you know, that mentions quite a number of really worrying things. But it says a third of hospitals, for example, don't have systems to dispose of or procedures to dispose of hazardous waste. That a significant number, I think it was half or something, of our doctors and our medical staff don't know how to handle sharp things. It's there. What's being done about it?
Okay.
So what I would want is our press to go out more and dig search
deeper.
out these stories, and then hold the people who wield the power, who can change things, hold them to account for that.
Yeah, actually what is happening is that there's been a confusion actually on the part of the system, on the part of the government. And I think that's why the media has done quite a good job, in as much as there is no support system from the other side. You can ask all these questions, but you see, just the other day, there was also confusion from the ministry itself when I think a group of doctors or medical practitioners came out and said, like, if Ebola strikes, the only thing that can help Kenya is God. You see, then I think last week or 2 days ago, they changed tact again, you see. After a meeting at Afya House. So you see, it's not actually, the media is actually really trying, because we're trying to get information from wherever we can, from whatever sources, you see. And I think the weekend papers have done a wonderful job here. Saturday and Sunday Standard, we've done a wonderful job. But the government, or rather the ministry, is a little bit confused.
Yes.
First and foremost, I want to start with Gadara. I think Gadara has a misplaced understanding of what the press is supposed to do. He's giving them a responsibility. Well, see, he has a very socialist tendency, understanding of what. He expects the press to
do
be.
Its job.
No, that's not its job. I keep telling you that the idea of media, the people who establish media houses, are capitalists,
right?
First and foremost, they're capitalists. They're out there trying to sell, as you said, developing content that is going to be attractive to people, and they're going to actually buy it. Whether it's sensational, bad news, whatever it is, whether it bleeds, it leads, as they say. Now, to expect that you're going to have media houses investing a lot of resources in trying to pursue a story that they're not sure about where it's going is to actually expect a bit too much from them, because there has to be a rate of return. There has to be a return on investment. In my opinion, that's why I'm calling you, I'm saying you have socialist tendencies in a capitalist-driven business. There has to be a situation where you're looking at a story, and I'm sure these conversations go on in editorial or whatever all the time. So we are going to chase this story, we are going to get this content, what exactly is it that we expect to get from our readership? Is this a kind of story they're looking for? When I say they're scared of running of bad news, one of the things, and I go, like for example, go back to the elections. Why did the media run away from talking about the possibility of violence? The same thing is happening right now. We have a situation where the media is saying, look, Kenyans don't look like they actually want to understand how vulnerable they are. Gadara would say they want to. But the public, the problem about...
No, I'm not even saying they want to, My point is the media is there to chase after the public interest,
This is the part, that's the part I disagree with him.
And
that's not why the media is there.
Actually, it is. And
so we should forget
when our
public
constitution
interest?
actually sits down and singles out, it's one of the few industries that actually singled out our constitution for special protection. There's a reason why. It's not just because we want them to make more money.
Very briefly on that, for us to move on to Wetangula and the incident at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Clay, your thoughts? We had from what, according to the senator, from where he sat, how events unfolded. KQ put out a statement after that, and they have not apologized. He said if they did not, he would move to court. Did the media give both sides of the story equally, or were they leaning towards saying it's not just about knowing people?
I think there was a system failure here, because first of all, he did not have an ID. How did he access the airport? Where was Kenya Airports Authority? First of all, for him to get to the counter, they gave him a boarding pass. He was
inside the plane.
Then they removed him. So there was a system failure. First of all, one more thing. It works like this. He had the platinum card, something like that, for KQ. That one, as long as they gave him a boarding pass, there was no point. How did he get to the plane? First of all. It's like this. I have a standard group ID card, yeah? Then I come here, then after I've gotten in, then the standard group tells me like, no, you cannot get in because you don't recognize this. He was inside the Kenya Airways plane and he has a KQ platinum card. Is that not identification enough? Because they already failed. Kenya Airways already failed. I mean, Kenya Airports Authority already. How did he access the airport without an ID? Why did they let him in the plane?
That's a question.
Why did they let him in the plane, first of all?
That's a question, and I think
why?
For us, what we should be looking at and focusing on is the process itself, and the fact that there shouldn't really be exceptions made for guys, whether or not. I mean, if I turned up at the airport without my ID, it's highly unlikely.
You see, the person, Kenya Airports Authority is not complaining here. Kenya Airports Authority is not complaining here. Yeah.
Whether or not I had my platinum card or not, it's highly unlikely whether I'd be allowed on a plane. And I'm a bit uncomfortable if we start making exceptions for quote unquote.
And that's how that story was covered.
Yeah. No. And there are other issues I think that are going to go with this. Remember the MP who discharged his weapon inside JKIA. How did he get to wherever it was that it was discharged with it? These are questions we need to be asking. What security do we have?
And going way back, remember the Atuls
with their passes to get into the secure sections of the airport. There is failure, and we need to go back and examine it. How do we actually let guys? How do guys get through to these places? One other thing which is slightly linked to this is again the whole issue of the fire at JKIA. Which we never got the report for. We were told somehow that they gave it to us when they spoke to the press. Nobody has seen that report. Where is it? How do we know JKI won't burn down again? It's all about securing your airports. Let's know what the problems are. Let's understand what the procedures that they put in place. Do they work? Don't they work? Let's interrogate them. And this is an entry point. I think the Wetangula case is an entry point which we can use to actually investigate a bit more about these processes.
I think, okay, first, he mentioned the issue about the MP who discharged the firearm. I think what happened in that particular situation was that, so you have a license, you have a firearm, you have a license, you're supposed to go and hand over your firearm to a particular part.
It was not concealed.
It was not concealed. During the handover
is when
he discharged it, and he was trying to make it safe or something. So that was actually a process. He's the one who made a mistake, and it happened at that particular point where he was supposed to be handing it over. This case of
wasn't that inside?
Where he's supposed to hand
it over. It's not that it was concealed.
You are following procedure, then you're handing over the firearm to the person
because you're not supposed to get on the plane with it.
So it
was following the process.
So as he was giving it in, when it was time to make it safe, he discharged it.
Okay.
So it was not a concealed thing.
It was a mistake done on the part of the person who owned the firearm. Now, the flip side of Wetangula, I think in Wetangula's case, what we are seeing is actually not a failure of the system per se. What we have seen, and I have on very many occasions when I'm traveling, you will see what we call high value, is it high net worth or high value individuals walk in, and right from the entrance there's a certain way they're treated by the system, and you could say this is a system failure. Maybe they believe it's a recognition. So you see former prime minister or the former vice president or Musalia Mudavadi, anybody who is a particular,
or even a current, let's say,
or even Clay Muganda, who you actually know, maybe
from TV, smile.
There's a way the system then re-engages that particular person vis-a-vis the way it engages ordinary people, and you'll find that part of the question you're asking, how he got all the way there, is because probably nobody asked him the question of his ID until he got there.
Yeah.
Because the assumption is, oh, this is Wetangula.
Yeah, and then they allowed it.
So he went in through the first maybe 3 checkups. Then at the 4th one, somebody asks him for his ID, and he gets
he was removed from the flight.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So at the 4th, if it was
and then somebody discovered.
Somebody came to his seat.
Somebody discovered. By the way, we don't have your ID.
It's
and
like
you see, so if I had been Wetangula, actually, I'd have really managed this thing differently, because it became a fuss because he fussed about it.
No, and you see, what was happening is that there were all these parliamentarians, all these people. Actually, all of them.
They all got offended.
They all got offended.
Yeah.
See, for me, that was my problem.
We have one of the thing is, Senator, do you have that up sound to listen to what he had to say? Yeah, let's play that, and then we'll continue the discussion, because they got furious. They wanted an apology. You can listen.
What is the purpose of an identity? Is it to show just a document, or is it to identify the individual and therefore qualify the safety of the aircraft and safety of the individuals thereon? So all we are saying is that this is a very serious issue. I think Kenya Airways should apologize to the leadership of Parliament. On our part, we felt very bad about the whole exercise and how we were inconveniencing people.
Ngunjiri.
My immediate reaction is that this is a group of people with an exaggerated sense of self-worth. From the day I listened to that clip the first time, my immediate reaction was like, who the hell do these guys think they are? You know, because you can't argue that any form of identification is legitimate.
And actually, the funny thing, he's saying that, and he has a lanyard on his neck, which actually he has a form of identification.
You can't argue that
he's wearing one.
I'm just supposed to show you something that identifies me. We have a certain protocol, procedure of this is what we will accept. If you are at the airport, we'll accept your passport, your national identity card. I mean, there's some places you can't even use your driving license. It has a photo and it comes from the government. So for me to listen to them argue that, I would, as Gadara said, and here I would agree with him, how many of us would actually be able to use that argument at an airport and get away with it? That you're refusing to allow me, and I've given you my student ID card or my work ID card that has my picture on it.
But was the media objective, or did they seem to lean on one side or the other, Gadara?
Well,
they sensationalize this. Sorry, as you go to Gadara, they sensationalize this. Yes, guys sensationalize this.
Really? Isn't it the members that were sensational about it, and then we just covered?
The media.
I agree with Obogan that it rarely happens, but I do agree with him on this. That it was sensational coverage, but it's not
really.
It's not new, if you will.
No,
it is reported. For me, it is reported very much as a he said, she said. You know, it's about the fight between KQ and Wetangula. That's the thing that we focus on. My viewpoint is actually the issues that it raises about how these guys are treated when they get to airports, about security within airports, etc., are not things that become the meat of the story. It is very much the sensational stuff. Was Wetangula drunk? You know,
I think the story should have
become the
I disagree.
The question should have been to Kenya Airports Authority. I still maintain Kenya Airports Authority, they own all the called aerodromes. They own all the aerodromes. Security for the aerodromes, it's theirs.
But who sought them out for an interview then?
That's what I'm saying. Like that should have been the question. We should have been actually questioning the security. Like I want to confess, I have flown from Mombasa using a newspaper byline. A picture byline.
Are you serious?
Yes.
This is me.
Yes.
This is me.
Wow.
See,
all right.
And it brings me back to what I was saying about the media. Which stories sell? Which stories sell? Gadara insists that the stories that the media should be focusing on are the substantive,
yes, and
genuine questions. That's him. But what is the story that sold that day? That Wetangula has been stopped at the airport, and then those other questions of where was he stopped, how did he get where he got,
was it a front page story anywhere?
But you see, it was a story. You know how many things happen in a country? How many things happen in a country? By the time your story makes it to the newspaper, by itself, whether it is like a small story.
But I don't even think that's about the media. That is just human nature. It's just in a situation, even in a village. It would be the thing that would capture everyone's attention, despite other underlying needs and issues in that particular area. So it's not just the media. I think it would be unfair to then come on and say.
So much that
thank you for making my point.
No. The problem isn't so much that you cover it from this fight between KQ and Wetangula, that you sensationalize it, that isn't per se the problem. The problem is that's the only angle that's covered. That's the only thing we talk about.
Okay.
If there was,
because it's the only thing that sells.
No, actually, it's not.
So you'd have had us talk about security.
Wait. I've seen this argument put out before that if you put out a serious newspaper, nobody will buy it. Well, the Business Daily, for example, is a serious newspaper about business and many figures. People buy it.
Compared
the Financial
to other
Times
papers.
is a serious.
Compared to other papers.
Times is a serious newspaper. People buy it. The
In
New York
comparison,
Times is a serious newspaper.
Gadara.
People
Are you
buy
saying
it.
that we don't have serious newspapers?
My point is, our
This
papers
is walking
shy
yourself
away
into
from
trouble.
seriousness because they think that their audience is dumb.
That,
and they
for
treat
example,
their
like the
audience
Business
as if
Daily,
it
it
is
has a target
It's a
market.
niche.
This
It's
is
a niche
masses.
market.
This is for
a
the
mass market newspaper.
For that one, of
Business
course, the
Day,
target
New York
audience
Times is a
will
mass
buy it,
market
will
newspaper.
fly off.
Do not think the Financial Times is a mass market newspaper.
It has a target
do
audience.
you know that? Do you know that
Niche.
they also
What,
they also
shopper
have
guys?
they also have such
People
kind
who
of
are
stories.
inside
eh?
the news
They
that
are-
are in that story.
No, they also have such kind of stories, like let's call them nefarious stories, as you want to. They also have sections for
Yes.
that. That's why they have pullouts, they have magazines and all that.
Right.
I mean, like there's this section. I mean, some sections actually in Business Daily, which I would not read myself if you're talking about
Okay.
seriousness. and
Gentlemen,
stuff like
I want
that.
us to move
But
from
I
that
think
place.
the
Yes.
only, and just a minute, even the way you keep on mentioning Kenya Airways, Kenya Airways, Kenya Airways, I think the whole point is, the question you're not asking is Kenya Airports Authority. That is where all of us.
That point has already been made
yes,
clear.
but
Let's
that
move
is
on. Very
what we
quickly,
should.
before we go to the next story, should KQ apologize or not? Yes or no?
Well,
No,
from
they
what
should.
I have read and what I have seen, I don't think they should.
Gunjiri?
Actually, using the same disclaimer, from what I have read and what I have seen, I don't
They should
think
not.
they should.
Clay?
Not that they should not apologize. The thing is, KQ should admit that they made a mistake. They should admit that they made a mistake. They gave a boarding pass to somebody who did not have any form of identification. They let this person into their vessel.
Okay.
Then they remove the pass. I mean, they should admit.
Let's go to land matters.
No,
The
that I agree
current land saga and what we've been hearing from that, and the president coming out to say people should not comment about this story as it's an ongoing process in court. And you look at the press conference the other day with the majority leaders from the parliament, both houses, on ICC, flanked by other Jubilee members, bashing the court and the judges and saying how it's taking a political tone. For the media to just report and say, oh, the president has said this or the other, and not to draw those linkages in as far as, isn't it then double speak? When it favors you, then people can talk about it. When it doesn't, then please keep quiet. Munjiri.
Well, I think first and foremost, it's important for us to remember that the president is a politician. and primarily, he is going to be looking at just getting those things that favor him out there. He's going to try. It's human nature, and it's a lot more political nature to try and reduce the number of bad negative information to you that is coming out, and to try and make that happen. Now, the responsibility is in how much do you allow him to get away with that.
Okay.
And I think it is now, that's why we have a constitution, that's why we have clearly set guidelines of rules of engagement. So he has the right to actually ask people not to comment about it. That's his right. Now, whether or not that right makes whether or not his requests, because it's actually a request, it's up to you to determine whether you're actually going to adhere to it or not, based on what is it that you're actually pursuing as media. Do you believe that, if, for example, he could ask, let's not comment on a particular security issue because it might compromise the process. National security as has been used. Now it's up to you who's been asked to determine whether a comment on it is actually going to compromise national security. And if you do comment, and he has a law that says you can be held before a court, then follow the process. But I think it's expecting too much to imagine that politicians will not keep asking you.
I'm not asking it from the element
news.
of the politician, is the media. For example, even when he came out on Peketoni and on one hand said, it's local political networks, not Al-Shabaab, then comes out again to say, by the way, it's Al-Shabaab. Do we let these politicians get away too much with some of this?
Of course. I mean, it's one of the things I've been saying for a long time, that a lot of our politicians are given a free ride in the press. The example you just gave of the president and Peketoni, it's a good example. He wasn't really taken to task, and even later on when he acknowledged it, when he came out, actually lied to Linus Kaikai, saying, no, I never said it wasn't Shabab, when he actually did say it wasn't. He wasn't taken to task, politicizing security in other jurisdictions would be a really serious charge, Here it is not. We just say politics is a dirty game and we forget about it. Going back to the current land saga, one of the problems I have with the coverage of it is the whole secrecy, and it's really a media, I wouldn't say enforced, but instigated secrecy. So the Nation reports that they have established that 40 MPs are involved, won't name a single one of them. Says they have established that top security officials are involved, won't name a single one of them. You know, and this is it's a tale that has been there. I mean, it's a way of doing business that our media has sort of perfected, of saying things without actually saying them. But you ask why? You know, they in their report, it's very interesting. If you go back and you look at it, they have these disclaimers for when other people refuse to be identified, when their sources refuse to be identified. And they will say, oh, that guy won't, we can't reveal his name because he's not authorized to speak on this, or he is afraid of the consequences if he comes out. They never tell us why they don't actually reveal the things they know.
No,
so
actually,
I would rather the media writes, actually, we are not too sure about these 40 names that we publish. I mean, these 40 guys that we said are there, so therefore we can't really stand by it, we can't name them, you know. Or maybe if they took us to court, we really don't have the evidence that there were 40 of them. Is that the case? In this case, what's it doing in the paper? You know. You said that Mr. Kenyatta is a politician, first of all. I mean, what you're actually saying that as a politician you're allowed to be economical with the truth. I don't think that's how.
Actually, no, that's not what I said.
I mean, that's the way you're implying it. Because my main issue, and this is something I discussed with Sophia, I think, even before we came on air, is that here you are telling us this matter is in court. Do not talk about it. It's in court. But at the same time, Mr. Ngunjiri and other people do talk about ICC. The reason I never talk about ICC is that ICC has created so many lawyers in this country. We have, everybody's a legal expert. The reason the ICC I talk about is International Cricket Council is because these are the ICC.
But the question, Clay, is why then does the media not...
That's what I'm talking about. This is a question that we need to be asking, like, why is Mr. Kenyatta telling us not to comment on this? Okay. And when the other people actually around him go ahead and comment on ICC, because I want to say this again, ICC will not be won or lost, the case will not be won or lost on the streets of Nairobi or the streets of Holland. It will be won in court. And I think Mr. Kenyatta knows this quite well. That's why he has a legal team there. Otherwise, he could have withdrawn the legal team and sent all these people there. So the media has failed in not asking and making those linkages. So what we're not putting these guys to task, and I think we more or less defied that because we've continued reporting on the current land grab or on the land issues. I think 2 weeks ago, Standard on Sunday, we had all this coverage about all these problems about land ever since in the Jubilee government came to power. We had all those things. I think this weekend also there were some other stories, you see, because it's a wider story.
Okay.
Yeah,
so quick one. He's mentioned something about.
More or less like defied.
Okay.
More or less like defied.
You mentioned something about the case might be won in the streets. You said you disagree with what?
This I do not believe that the Kenyan cases are going to be decided only in court. I think it's become very clear that those cases are not just being decided in court. They're being decided. For example, I mean, when you see a prosecutor or when you see a suggestion by a lawyer that maybe you need to take this thing to a political structure, like the Assembly of State Parties, it tells you that the process of this particular case has a lot of other ramifications rather than just a legal process. And as much as that is an aside, we have a situation where one of the victim's lawyer is saying, maybe you need to refer
a lawyer. You know, all this guy, he keeps on mentioning lawyers.
It is a lawyer.
Yeah, lawyers are the ones who are making all these suggestions.
And it is
people who run around, not people who go and lie prostrate on the streets of The Hague.
No. But you see, when it goes to the Assembly of State Parties,
yes,
the conversation that's going to be held there is a political conversation.
It's not
a legal conversation.
I think
this is why I agree from
ICC. I agree to an extent with what Ngunjiri says, but I think he is taking the wrong example. The referral to the Assembly of State Parties is something that's allowed for within
the legal framework.
Yes, so it actually take it.
It's not going outside the legal process. It's actually part of it, you know. But you see, I agree with him. I agree with him in the sense that the case is not just being tried inside the courtroom, you know, and a lot of this is because the government and Mr. Kenyatta have chosen
and the
to
prosecutor
try it outside of the courtroom.
Even the prosecutor, by the way, let's be fair.
And I don't want us to go into I know that one we can talk about forever.
Coming back to the current case, I think Clay does make a good point.
Yes.
At least in as far as the president's statement is concerned, that it seems to be double standards when he says you can't talk about that case, but you can talk about another one. You know, so that's true. I also think that, I mean, the Standard did an interesting bit when they looked at the history of this land, which has been caught for a while, you know, from the, I think from the 80s or something. And they looked at it. And at one point, the Court of Appeal declared Mr. Dagama Rose, I think, as the guy who owns the land. The NIC, in fact, back in today's paper,
in today's paper,
National Lands Commission, rather, has said the land is his. You know, who are all these other guys who are turning up with title deeds to land where both the courts and the commission in charge say actually those aren't valid documents? You know, and I agree, fine, it will go back to, you will have a court case, all these things will be adjudicated, but in the end, what I would really want the media to focus on is how do people end up with all these with all these title deeds? And let's not just have, once the case has been adjudicated, forget about it. There are serious questions to be raised as to how people procure title deeds to land, you know, and how we secure that title, because that title is meant to be your deed to a piece of property. You know, if government can go and manufacture other deeds and give them out to other people, you know, then we've got a huge bloody problem.
All right, I want us to take a break and perhaps come back and talk about this tour by the president that has been planned and cancelled apparently a number of times. So we'll have Director Digital Communication from the Office of the President to also help us clarify as we look at how the media has covered, because Senator Omar the other day said that perhaps even when you hear some of the leaders from Kisumu saying that they have issues, or Nyanza talking about perhaps the president shouldn't come now, if he comes let him come with Raila, is because they know that the media, the minute they see them alongside the president, the headline will be, oh, president making inroads, this and this ones are now part of Jubilee, that it's the media that now then spins this whole to a different story. We'll talk about that and more on the newsroom when we return.